My name is Eliza. I'm a 40-year-old woman. I have a loving family. My husband, two sons, and I get along really well. I met my husband Robert at work, and we got married 10 years ago. We clicked right away because we both loved music and grew up near each other. We'd go to concerts together, share CDs, and quickly became close. It didn't take long for Robert to bring up marriage, and I was overjoyed at the time. From there, everything went smoothly, and we tied the knot without any hitches. Our first son was born a year and a half later, followed by our second son 2 years after that. Despite our busy lives, we're having a great time as a family. Then Robert got transferred for work. We're originally from Atlanta, but moved to Boston for job reasons. We often talked about eventually moving back to Atlanta, if possible. This transfer finally made that dream come true. We saw it as a perfect opportunity to build our dream home in Atlanta. Though it'll take some time for the new house to be completed, the moving date is fast approaching. We considered Robert moving first and living alone temporarily, but with the kids' school schedules and other factors, we decided that it was best for all of us to move together now. So we've decided to temporarily stay at Robert's parents' house. His parents are getting on in years and having a hard time with the stairs in their spacious home. They're considering moving to a smaller, more accessible house. So we figured living with them for a short while wouldn't be a big deal. They welcomed the idea, and neither I nor our sons had any reservations about living with the in-laws. So we'll stay with them until our new home is built and they find a new place to live. Our kids were thrilled to leave our cramped apartment for a larger home with a yard. I was also excited to escape the hustle and bustle of Boston and return to Atlanta, a place I love. However, I had no idea that this choice would bring about some serious challenges. Moving day arrived. All our belongings were packed into the moving truck, leaving our apartment completely empty. We headed to my in-laws' house. "Welcome back! You must have traveled far. Glad you made it." Macy, my kind-hearted mother-in-law, greeted us with a warm smile. I always think Robert takes after his gentle and calm mom, Macy. Darren, my father-in-law, is a man of few words, but he looked genuinely happy to see his grandchildren after so long. "Mom, Dad, we're gonna shake things up for a while. Sorry about that. Thanks for having us." "Darren, Macy, we know you have health concerns, so we'll do our best to make things easy. Thank you for welcoming us." After Robert and I said our hellos, my in-laws greeted us warmly in return. I was a little tense about living with my in-laws, but seeing their smiles put me at ease. We carried our bags into the room they had prepared for us and began to unpack right away. As I was organizing stuff in the kids' room, I was startled by a loud thumping sound coming from the room next door. The kids stopped and looked startled too. After that, the sound ceased, and all went quiet. We continued to unpack, but I couldn't shake off this nagging feeling. And my unease proved right that night. Come dinner time, Macy laid out a spread of homemade dishes. Macy is good at cooking, and told the kids, "I went all out for you today." The kids' eyes lit up with joy at their favorite dishes on the table. Then Macy said, "I need to call Sissy down. Darren, could you go get her?" Hearing this, Robert looked surprised and asked, "Wait, Sissy's still living here? I thought she moved out." "Nope, she's still here. She quit her job and has been staying ever since." "Seriously? I thought she was long gone. You should have told me." "Well, it's not like she would leave. Besides, she's not causing any harm." Overhearing Robert and Macy's hushed conversation, I felt a sense of foreboding. I've only met Robert's sister Sissy once during our wedding, but unlike Robert, she struck me as a gloomy person. She's always been socially awkward, and Robert doesn't seem too fond of her. Though they're siblings, Robert said they barely talked until he moved out, and I remember him telling me that. I remember feeling we wouldn't get along when we briefly talked at the wedding. Soon, Darren came down from the upstairs, followed by Sissy, who seemed rather annoyed. With her unkempt hair and stretched-out sweatshirt, Sissy looked like the epitome of antisocial. Robert sighed, and the kids started to feel uneasy with Sissy's strange vibes. The moment Sissy sat at the table, the atmosphere turned awkward, and I couldn't take it anymore. I broke the silence. Sissy, long time no see. We'll be staying here for a while." Upon hearing that, Sissy glared at me and said, "You guys were noisy in the next room." That's when I realized she was the one making the noise by hitting the wall. "I'm sorry for the noise. We'll be more careful." "Look, we've got kids. Some noise is inevitable, right? A little tolerance wouldn't hurt, so the kids can be at ease," Robert told Sissy. Sissy silently started eating, while the kids looked visibly downcast. I was unable to bear it, so I smiled and spoke to my sons. "Grandma's happy to see you two energetic. Don't worry about it." Just be yourselves, kids. Enjoy. Hearing this, the kids finally relaxed and started eating, which put us at ease. However, Sissy's constant displeasure had me on edge. Later, as the kids were getting ready for bed after showering, I told them, "Your aunt, Dad's sister, is in the room next door. Remember not to be too noisy. Remember the time at the apartment when the neighbor got mad for being loud? We've got to be careful. Once our new home is ready, we won't have to worry about this. Hang in there." Upon hearing this, the kids replied with a yes. After the kids went to bed, I got thirsty and went to the kitchen for some water. Sissy was there alone, so I cautiously spoke. "I've told the kids to keep the noise down in the room. We won't be here long, but we'll try not to bother you. Sorry for any inconvenience." Then Sissy looked at me and said, "I don't mind the kids being noisy. They're just children after all. What bothers me is you acting all nice. Just because you have kids and a husband doesn't give you the right to look down on me." She then walked past me and went upstairs. I stood there dumbfounded, unable to believe what I'd just heard. I never intended to look down on Sissy or act like a goody two-shoes. I was just trying to make both our lives a bit more comfortable. It really bothered me when she reacted the way she did. I thought about telling Robert, but it didn't seem like a great idea to start off our new living situation with a complaint. So I kept quiet. However, Sissy continued to treat me poorly the following days. Thankfully, she wasn't mean to the kids, but she always found a way to nitpick or make snide remarks at me. It was tough. I love her cooking as much as the next person, but I figured it must be hard for her to cook every day, so I also cooked sometimes. And whenever I did, Sissy would complain. "The soup tastes a bit bland today, needs more flavor," she'd say, making a show of heading to the kitchen for seasoning. "This is overcooked to the point it's losing its shape. It's not food for the elderly, you know." She would complain, leaving food on her plate, bit by bit chipping away at my morale. I'd laugh it off each time, saying, "Sorry, I guess I can't compare to Macy's culinary skills." Both the kids and my husband would laugh when they heard this. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but it was getting to me. I never thought moving into my in-laws' house would be so emotionally draining. I couldn't bring myself to talk to my husband about it, but one day I gathered the courage to confide in Macy. "Macy, do you think Sissy doesn't like me?" Hearing this, Macy looked surprised. "Why would you say that? Of course she doesn't hate you." "Well, ever since we moved in, she's been leaving the food I make, complaining that it's bland. It hurts, you know." Smiling warmly, Macy said, "Don't worry about it. Sissy's always been difficult and hardly straightforward. She often says the opposite of what she's thinking. Plus, it's been a while since she talked to someone her age. I think she just wants to chat. Don't take it to heart," she said, patting my shoulder before heading out to the garden. I could only let out a deep sigh. Macy probably just said that to appease me. She seemed to struggle with Sissy too. Maybe Macy was glad Sissy's complaints were directed at me and not at her. At that moment, I knew I couldn't keep living with her. Not like this. That night, I was cleaning up the dishes when Sissy walked into the kitchen, leaving us alone. I avoided eye contact as best I could, but Sissy just had to make a snide comment. "You told Mom, didn't you, that you can't stand me?" I turned to Sissy, waving my hands in denial. "I didn't say that. I thought if I talked to Macy about it, we could find a way to get along better. I feel like I've been making you uncomfortable." "Oh, playing the victim, huh? That's what irritates me about you. You wish I'd just go away, don't you?" "That's not what I'm thinking. Sissy, let me wash that glass for you." As I reached for Sissy's glass, she snapped, "Stop it!" and knocked my hand away. "You're so annoying, trying to act like the good one here." With that, Sissy stormed out of the kitchen. I didn't know what to do anymore. Tears started to roll down my cheeks. Seeing that I hadn't returned, Robert came looking for me. Upon seeing my red eyes, he quickly embraced me. "Hey, what's going on? Something happened?" I hesitated, torn whether to tell Robert or not, but my tears kept falling. Robert took me to our room and rubbed my back until I calmed down. I couldn't hold back any longer. I spilled everything about how Sissy had been treating me and how much it hurt. Robert listened to the very end. When I finished, Robert spoke gently. "I'm really sorry about Sissy, but you should have talked to me sooner. We're a couple. Don't keep things to yourself." I didn't want to make Robert feel bad or worried, but hearing him say that made me feel glad I had told him. Robert was furious, unable to forgive Sissy. Already having issues with her, his disdain for Sissy grew even more for hurting me. Robert proposed a plan. Given that he was in charge of our parents' relocation, he suggested using that as leverage to teach Sissy a lesson. I was concerned, asking him, "Is that really okay?" But Robert was absolutely confident. The day of reckoning was also the day we'd move in to our new home. Robert had told me to steer clear of Sissy as much as possible until then. So I did just that, avoiding Sissy whenever I could. Sure, she had complaints, but I chose to ignore them. Perhaps finding it less entertaining to not get a rise out of me, Sissy started to stay in her room even more. Frankly, it worked to our advantage. While Sissy kept to her room, Robert and I arranged a new living situation for his parents. We researched and suggested an ideal nursing home for them. This place had certified caregiving staff on hand, and it offered private spaces where they could live normally but get immediate help if needed. When Robert explained to his parents that they could continue to live as they always had, they were thrilled, having had no idea such options even existed. When Robert asked if he should proceed with the paperwork, his parents happily left it to us, so the preparations went smoothly. Meanwhile, our new home was nearly complete. Finally, the moving day arrived. Both our families made steady progress in our moving preparations until the movers arrived. "It's time to say goodbye to this house. I'll miss it, but I'm excited for our new lives," Macy said, watching Darren and the movers load up their belongings. Even the kids were excited, running around the yard as they watched the movers pack their stuff. The hustle and bustle inside prompted Sissy to finally emerge from her room. "What's going on? Wait, we're moving?" She was clearly clueless. Robert and I exchanged a knowing smile. Sissy then went over to her parents. "Hey, you should have told me it was going to get noisy with the movers. Robert and his family are leaving today." Hearing this, Macy responded, "Not just Robert's family, dear. We're moving too." Sissy's eyes widened in shock. "What? I didn't know about this. Am I going to be the only one left in this house? Why?" She was visibly panicking, and understandably so. Losing the support of her parents would be a big problem for Sissy, who was both antisocial and unemployed. "We did tell you, from outside your room. If you didn't hear, that's on you." Usually, the quiet Darren calmly broke the news to Sissy. Sissy shot Darren a glare. "What? I didn't hear about this. Have the movers pack my stuff too." "Pack your stuff? Where are you planning on going?" Macy asked Sissy, with a confused look on her face. Sissy, visibly puzzled, retorted, "Huh? To the house where Mom and Dad are moving, of course. We live together, so obviously I'm moving too." "What are you talking about?" Darren once again calmly shared the reality. "We're moving to an assisted living facility. It's not a place for you." At this, Sissy raised her voice. "What do you mean? I don't get it!" She began to shout angrily. Robert and I couldn't help but smirk. Sissy then turned to us. "Hey, let me live at your place. It's a new house, right? If you can afford to build in the countryside, there must be plenty of room," she said. Shocked at her audacity, Robert coldly responded, "I can't live with someone who hurts my wife. I have no obligation to share a home with Sissy. No way." Upon hearing this, Sissy shot me a glare. "Ah, so you went and played the victim to Robert and made me out to be the bad guy? How annoying! Why is it always me who has to suffer?" Sissy was making a scene. Robert then dropped another truth bomb. "Also, unfortunately, there's no point in keeping this house when my parents are moving into assisted living. We've decided to sell it to support them. So, Sissy, start packing up." Upon hearing this, Sissy was dumbfounded and muttered, "What does this mean?" Just then, Macy and Darren joined us. Sissy clung to her in-laws, crying. "Why are you leaving me behind? Why do I have to leave?" Darren and Macy sighed in disbelief. "We can't continue to care for someone who stays cooped up all day, vents her frustrations at Mom, and then takes it out on Liza when she arrives. You need to figure things out for yourself. You're an adult. Stop being a burden on your brother." Darren addressed Sissy. Darren's usually calm voice was tinged with anger. Yes, Robert had talked to his parents about Sissy. They too seemed exasperated with how to deal with her. And when they learned that I was on the receiving end of Sissy's outbursts, Darren was pretty livid. Macy felt terrible for brushing off my concerns and even cried about it. They decided Sissy should start living on her own, which led to this current plan. Sissy broke into tears at Darren's words, shouting, "This doesn't make any sense!" In the midst of this awkward atmosphere, the movers worked efficiently to get us ready for our new lives. My in-laws headed for the retirement home, and we went off to our new home. Sissy, left behind, had to scramble to find a cheap apartment to move into before the house was sold a week later. Since Sissy was unemployed, she was now forced to live on her own, which in a way kick-started her re-entry into society. It seemed like that was my in-laws' goal all along. Robert looked quite pleased with having given his sister a reality check. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Now we've moved into the home of our dreams and are starting a new chapter in our lives.